ألف لام را تلك آيات الكتاب الحكيم أكان للناس عجبا أن أوحينا إلى رجل منهم أكان للناس عجبا أن أوحينا إلى رجل منهم أن أنذر الناس وبشر الذين آمنوا أن لهم قدم صدق عند ربهم قال الكافرون إن هذا لساحر مبين إن ربكم الله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض في 6 أيام ثم استوى على العرش يدبر الأمر ما من شفيع إلا من بعد إذنه ذلكم الله ربكم فاعبدوه أفلا تذكرون إليه مرجعكم جميعا وعد الله حقا إنه يبدأ الخلق ثم يعيده ليجزي الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات بالقسط والذين كفروا لهم شراب من حميم وعذاب أليم بما كانوا يكفرون هو الذي جعل الشمس ضياء والقمر نورا وقدره منازل لتعلموا عدد السنين والحساب ما خلق الله ذلك إلا بالحق يفصل الآيات لقوم يعلمون.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي قص لنا من آياته عجبا وأفادنا بتوفيقه إرشادا وأدبا وجعل القرآن دافعا عنا مقتا وغضبا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم عبد الله ورسوله ما بعد. We thank the Almighty Allah for blessing us with another day. We thank Him for His mercies that He's bestowed upon us. We bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except the Almighty Allah. We also bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His servant and His messenger. Today is a Thursday which corresponds with the 11th day of Dhul Qa'dah or Dhul Qi'dah, 1441 years after the Hijrah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which also corresponds with the 2nd day of July 2020. The Almighty Allah has given us another opportunity to come to see brothers again and share one or two things that is incumbent upon us to share. As you see, the title is Islamic Philosophy Class, and there is a reason behind, this class, and it's going to be in a series, inshallah. It's going to touch mainly on, philosophical issues and Islam's position on that. And it's also as a result of, some brothers who, requested that why don't we speak on some of these issues, especially on the English language, because the discourse within our communities has been more of, the Hausa language. So why don't we tackle some of these things, because not everybody understands Hausa, or not everybody grasps the Hausa language in that depth. But if we can tackle some of these issues from the English language perspective, is going to do a lot of good to people. And Alhamdulillah, I agree with that perspective. And obviously, looking at the terrain now, especially on social media, you find out that there is this, back and forth concerning, philosophical ideologies, critical thinking, common sense people, and stuff like that. So what is Islam's position on that? And is Islam compatible with, scientific knowledge? Is the Quran, in line and in tandem with, scientific language and stuff like that? Is Islam only about beliefs? It's a question that most people ask, and it is a dilemma that some young Muslims are facing in our communities, that some people are blaming the religion for, the problems that Africa or Africans are facing, and the need for us to do away with religion and then just practice our common sense. Other people are of the view that, yes, there is a God, but he doesn't interfere in our activities. Everybody can do whatever they want to do. And the most amazing thing in all these discourse is that a sister who is a Muslimah, commented on the post of a brother. The brother was talking about hijab and its etiquette, its rules, and a sister commented. And, it was a sucker punch. It hit me in the face. What's this thing about, male? For her, Allah is a female. Yes, Allah is a female. She is wonderful. She is loving. She created me. She loves me. So we have, a Muslim who feels that Islam is too patriarchal, and Allah can also be a female. And issues concerning, Islam and women empowerment, Islam and modern day sciences, Islam and epistemology, Islam and scientific methods, Islam and atheism, Islam and deism, and all these things. What is Islam's position on that? As Muslims, our religion has, a system in everything that we practice. Our religion has, code of ethics in whatever we do, and Islam is a religion that has opened our minds and then our hearts to these things, and we need to have a critical look about the way we go about doing our things. Previously, 50, 60, 70 years ago, in our Muslim communities, the major form of education was the Islamic Arabic education. So you find out that most of our fathers and our grandfathers, can't read or write English because they didn't attend those schools. They are rather well versed in the Arabic language, because as Muslims, that was what they studied then by default. I quite remember one day I was with the National Chief Imam, and then someone brought a letter for him to endorse, and the letter was in Arabic language. And the old man said he can't endorse the letter, he can't sign it. The reason being, he can't read English and understand. But if they want him to really endorse that letter, put his signature upon it, they should go and translate it in Arabic, because he can read and understand Arabic. So that was a dilemma. That was then. Because of one or two reasons, our grandfathers didn't allow our fathers to go to, the English school. So it is a major misconception, a wrong perception to think that the Muslims are not educated because they don't speak English. No. We have very serious grammarians and scholars in the Muslim community. People with PhDs. But it's just quite unfortunate that the community relies on English as the major lingua franca. So we don't see those people in the communities, in the Muslim communities, those people who have PhDs in Islamic law, people who have PhDs in linguistics, people who have PhDs in different forms of, knowledge. But the problem or the issue is that it is in the Arabic language. So you find out that people don't really know them, or the impact on society, their impact on society is minimal. And that's an issue. So that's what it happened, 50, 60, 70 years ago. So later, the need for us to, go into English schools became apparent. So we started migrating to the English schools. So now you find within the Muslim communities, intellectuals, technocrats who are well versed in the English language, doctors, lawyers, engineers, economists, businessmen, people who have, the know-how when it comes to English language. So there was this major shift from the Arabic Islamic knowledge education to the English secular form of education. And it's a problem. It's a problem. 60, 70 years ago, the community was predominant with Arabic speakers, Muslim Jewish scholars, who were also doctors too. When I say doctors, I mean medical officers too. Because in our series, you realize that Muslims have written books on medicine, and they are in Arabic. And Al-Qanun fi Tib by Ibn Sina was a major book in medicine that was used by the known world at that time. And even European medical centers or schools use them. So we'll come down to that, inshallah. We'll talk about that. What has been, the contribution of Muslims in science and technology? All these technological advancements that you see, is it only the West that contributed to that? What has been Muslims' contribution? Sometimes it's questions that young Muslims ask, which are legitimate questions. They look at the Muslim world today and see that in terms of science and technology, we are back. In terms of innovations, we are far behind. In terms of, agriculture, we are behind. In terms of business models, we are behind. I'm not talking about a specific Muslim community, but the Muslim nations in general, except of a few Muslim nations who have, invested and contributed into science and technology. You find that it's only a small number of Muslim nations who are doing that. So the young Muslim who has gone to the university to go and read and study, he is at a crossroads. What has been Muslims and Islam's contribution to the development of the world? Is Islam only about, belief systems? Is Islam only about spirituality? Is Islam only about the masjid? Is Islam only about, Sharia? What has been Islam's contribution to, to the development of the world? So this young man is thinking. He's read philosophy. He's read about philosophers like René Descartes. He's read about, Vladimir Lenin. He's read about Karl Marx. He's read about Democritus. He's read about all these philosophers and the kind of, impact they've been able to make onto the known world. So he's asking, do we have Muslim philosophers? What has Islam got to say about philosophy? Do we have anything called Islam and philosophy? Isn't Islam a dumb religion that doesn't allow you to think outside the box? Isn't Islam, clamping upon your rights? Isn't Islam not allowing you to think and reflect and think outside the box? Why is Islam so rigid and so conservative? Why are Muslims so backwards and so conservative? Why? So these are the questions that this young Muslim is asking. And then he is in a Songo community. And then he comes to the masjid to come and pray. There is this little, bit of iman in his heart. But then what is going on in his mind will blow you apart. So we're just trying to see how best we can help that young Muslim to find his feet. That's all. Try as much as possible to give him a guiding touch where he'll be able to, find the answers to the questions that are bothering him. Most often than not, we are reluctant or hesitant or incapable of answering these questions. For example, the existence of Allah. Does God really exist? What has Islam got to do with metaphysics? But so it's something that is mind-boggling. Sometimes you hear some scholars say some things that you look at it and then you think that no, this is not compatible with the mind. This is not compatible with the brain. This is not compatible with modern day science. This is not compatible with philosophy. This is not compatible with psychology. And these are legitimate questions people are asking. And does Islam clamp upon, asking questions? Is there a threshold upon that I will get to in asking a question? Is Islam open to all kinds of questions? What about Islam and feminism? Is there anything like a Muslim who is a feminist? What is Islam and philosophy? What is Islam and atheism? What is Islam and women empowerment? Why is it that a woman cannot lead Salah? Isn't it, clamping upon her rights? Islam and human rights, Islam and animal rights, Islam and the ecology, Islam and then the environment. These are questions that the young Muslim is asking. He needs serious answers too. And we need to answer him. Definitely, we need to answer him. So now, the historically, the drift has moved away from, studying, going through pure Islamic education to studying for school. So because we saw the need for us to go to, the English schools to go and read, psychology, philosophy, medicine, and stuff like that. So we got to a point whereby we had two stark contrasting communities. Within the same community, we had people who had gone to Islamic education, Arabic scholars of the high eminence, wonderful scholars, big brains, sharks in the Arabic field. And then we have people who have gone to school, English school, wonderful brains, sharks. But then there has been a recent development too, that you find people within the Ghanaian Muslim community now combining the two. People who have now become the bridges, bringing the two communities together. We need to understand these philosophies as we move on. In the beginning, our fathers, our mothers went to the Arabic, Islamic schools only. Most of the schools, English schools, belong to the Christian missionaries. So the tendency of their kids being converted to Christianity was a major factor for them. So they didn't, enroll their children in those English schools. Their children were already doing well in Arabic schools. They could speak Arabic fluently, they could write Arabic, they could read Arabic. It was clear, straightforward. So you find out that most of the scholars that we had in Ghana didn't go outside anywhere to go and study. The National Chief Imam didn't go anywhere to study. There are a lot of scholars in Ghana. They didn't go anywhere to go and study. They studied in Ghana, and the teachers, they studied the Arabic language fluently. They know it. Moving down, the trend changed. We realized that no, we are being shortchanged because the major language for in the country was English language when it was 10. If you check the currency in the Gold Coast or even right after independence, you find out that there are Arabic writings on them. Check the currency that we were spending. There were Arabic writings on them. And these Arabic writings, even though they were Arabic letters, they were written in Hausa. Because at that time, before independence and right after independence, the Ghanaian Muslim community was very educated. Is still educated. What I'm trying to say is that the knowledge was in the Arabic language. So they could read, write, and understand Arabic fluently. So the colonial government and even the Nkrumah government at that time realized that no, our currency should have Arabic writings on them. But then we didn't inculcate Arabic into, the system as, a second language together with the English language. It remained only the English language. So as the communities moved on, we got to a point where Muslims in the country realized that no, we couldn't, make meaningful contribution to the socioeconomic development of the country because of the language barrier. So what is the solution? They sent our other brothers and uncles to school, English school. And because of the hectic nature, they were not able to combine the two, the Arabic Islamic education with the secular English education. They weren't able. So we got to a point where we had two different communities in the same community, two different communities of scholars, the Arabic Islamic scholars and then the English secular scholars. The Arabic Islamic scholars didn't have enough knowledge about the English secular education, and the English secular education also didn't have enough information about the Arabic Islamic education. So there was this stark contrast and there was this gap between them. In the 90s coming down to the 2000s, there was this change again. We realized that no, there's a need for us to combine the two, because for you to be an astute Muslim lawyer or a Muslim, engineer or a Muslim scientist, there is a need for us to combine the two. Combine Islamic education with medicine. Combine Islamic education with journalism. Combine Islamic education with engineering. Combine Islamic education with philosophy and psychology. Going back to the original roots of Muslims 1,000 years ago, where the Muslims combined all this knowledge together so they were able to rule the known world. I quite remember when I finished high school, St. Augustine's College, when I came home, the old man asked me, what next? What are you going to do? I said, I think I must go to the Islamic Research Institute to study research. So I was shipped to research, straightforward. So most of our colleagues that we completed high school with, they went straight into the university. I went and I joined, Islamic Research and Reformation Center, Mahdi Darasat al-Islamiyah, Institute of Islamic Studies. A guy who has finished, high school, St. Augustine's College. I read Agric Science. I'm now going back to start JHSS 2. That's where I started my Islamic education. Even though I had gone through Rashad College, through that, I have to go to research and start from JSS 2. I thought I was a shark. I thought I was brainy. I entered the class, and for 1 month, I didn't understand what was going on because the lessons were in pure Arabic. But then, we held forth. So we were able to graduate and continue further, went to Niger to go and study. So the picture I'm trying to paint here is 60, 70 years ago, before independence, the Muslim community had, predominant Arabic, Islamic, scholars. 2 decades or 3 decades later, or 4 decades later, it started changing to go into the secular, English education. Then, some decades later, or 2 decades or 3 decades ago, we started blending them now. So you find out that now in the Muslim community, we have 3 forms of scholars. We have scholars from the English secular education purely. And then we have the Arabic Sharia, scholars purely. And then we have people who are in between, who have merged between, the secular education and then the Arabic education. And it's something positive, and then we need to, have a look at that. But then, where is the dilemma now that we are trying to, diagnose and then find solutions to? We now have, young Muslims who have gone to, the English schools, who have read philosophy, who have read psychology, who have read, works of Sigmund Freud and Pavlov and Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin and then Nietzsche and René Descartes. They've read about these people. So they are confused. These people have brought forth to them, sound and solid arguments that is questioning, divinity, is questioning religion, is questioning religious beliefs. How do they get these answers right? It becomes a problem. So they end up, either they bottle these things up. It's a dilemma. If they're going to speak about it in the community, they are going to be chastised. They are not going to get the answers that they need. They are going to be shouted upon.
You're going to be chased and ostracized. We are going to declare them as kuffar. We are going to declare apostasy on them. So some of them, they hold it up. And mind you, anything that is being held up in a keg will one day explode. So this is the dilemma that these people are facing. Young Muslims who I interact with, people I meet in the universities, people I meet, on the streets, people who send me messages in my inbox. These are some of the questions that they ask. And then they say, we trust you. That is why we're asking you these questions. Because we asked other people and told us, keep quiet. You don't ask these questions in Islam. This is blasphemous. You're going to leave Islam. The Almighty Allah is going to curse you for asking some of these questions. Excuse me. And some of these questions, some of these people who ask these questions are not all in the same baskets. Some of them are what we call, Muslim philosophers call ashakul manhaji. That is, methodological doubts. They have doubts, but then it's a methodological doubt. But some people have ashakul abathi, which we call as, it is a doubt that is in sarcasm. So we need to differentiate that. Those Muslims who are asking some of these, controversial, mind-boggling questions are asking the questions because they want to have, serious answers. Because they are reading things that are attacking their iman. They are reading things that are attacking their faith. They are being exposed to materials that are questioning the existence of the Almighty Allah. So, honestly and sincerely, they are looking for answers. You need to have that bracket of people too. They are there. It's not everybody who questions the existence of the Almighty Allah is doing so in sarcasm. No. It's not everybody who questions, Islam is doing so to attack Islam or belittle Islam. We need to have open-minded discussion on some of these things. So the young Muslim who is in Legon, or who is in UCC, or who is in UST, or who is, who has traveled outside Africa and then he's living in the Western world and then he's coming to contact with all kinds of ideologies and philosophies, is asking questions. His iman in Allah is strong, so he is not diverting out to say there's no Allah. But then there are some salient questions that his mind is asking him. So there are that category too. There are others too who have thrown everything to the dogs. They feel no. They are Muslims. They were born Muslims. They grew up as Muslims. But then, because of the exposure they are having now, they are beginning to question their Islam. They are beginning to question the relevance of Islam in their lives. So in the end, will they join Christianity? No. Will they join Judaism? No. What about Buddhism? It's foreign to them. What about Confucianism? It's foreign to them. So what do they think? Okay, let's look at deism. We'll believe there is a God, but there's no rules and regulations. You do whatever you want to do. They have that belief that yes, there is God, but then there's nothing like rules and regulations, like the Sumaniyin of the kingdom of the Sinds in India some centuries, 1,000 years ago. They said yes, they believe in the existence of God, but then they understood that the problem of the world was these messengers come with rules and regulations to come and disturb everybody. So there are people who have that ideology, deism. They say we are going to use our mind, critical thinking, common sense thinking. So they have that. So they pose questions to you in Islam, and then because you've not read Islam very well, you are in a dilemma. You don't know how to answer. You get confused. And then you don't read deeper. You only cherry pick on Google and then Wikipedia, and then you find out, oh yes, those people, they make sense, and then you follow suit. You have young Muslims who have that problem. Others go beyond deism and say, this thing about religion is nonsense, it's bullshit. We don't need it. There's nothing like God. It's just something that people have created in their minds to be able to control other people. So you find people on social media say religion is something that the whites, created Christianity so that they can steal the resources of Africa. And then the Arabs also, created Islam so that they can, make, us into slaves. So you have people who have that mentality that we all need to go back to the African religion or to the African, ideology or to the African perspective and stuff like that. So these are questions that, people are genuinely asking, especially people within our communities that have only secular English or French education. They read philosophy, Western philosophies. They read Western psychology. So they have these tendencies. And we'll come and talk about history of, atheism in Islam and other cultures. Because of communities and code of ethics, some communities are exposed to atheism and secularism. Other communities are not exposed to it because of how the communities are formed. Muslim communities are formed and Islamic education is formed in a way that atheism has no room in there because of some factors that will come to an episode on that, and then we speak about that. In some communities, atheism is given the fertilizer with which it can thrive. Even though those communities have religions and religious institutions and religious philosophies and ideologies, those religions didn't have the answers to the dilemma that, their thinkers and psychologists have and philosophies have. They didn't have the solutions to them. So atheism and secularism has, an inroad which it can enter them. There. So these are the first group of people we have in the community, the Muslim community. People who have gone to school, they've studied English, they've studied psychology, they've studied, logic, they've studied rationale, they've read all kinds of books, Western civilization, Western education. So it's asking them questions. On the other hand, we have the Muslim scholars, studied Islam in Arabic, studied Sharia, studied hadith and tafsir. But unfortunately, we didn't put our minds, and I'm part of that generation, and I'm part of that community, that we studied some of these things, Tawheed, Fiqh, Sirah, Hadith. We didn't touch on philosophy. We didn't touch on psychology. We didn't look into medicine. We didn't look into engineering. We didn't look into mathematics. We didn't look into these, sciences. And it is as if those sciences and Islam are at loggerheads. Because, excuse me, with all due respect to our scholars, you find that it's only a few of us, or a few of the scholars, who have been able to merge, Islamic, jurisprudence with, natural sciences or human sciences, even in the Arabic language. Even though Islam calls for these things, Islam calls for, analysis, Islam calls for observation, Islam calls for experimentation. There are a lot of scientific verses in the Quran and then the Hadith. There are a lot of philosophical sayings in the Quran and Hadith. There are a lot of, psychological sayings. The Quran talks about the mind. The Quran talks about the brain. The Quran talks about, observing nature. And that verse in Surah Al-Fatir blows us away when you have a Quranic verse speaking about geology, speaking about meteorology, speaking about, science. But then we are not able to merge the two because these sciences, the science of the tafsir, science of hadith is a whole course on its own. So it will be very difficult to merge it, to go in to study, philosophy on its own, study medicine on its own. So I'm not blaming, and I'm not belittling, and I'm not underestimating people. I'm just trying to bring our minds to where the problem is and see how best we can what? We can solve it. So this is a diagnosis that we are doing to see where the problems are, where the loopholes are, and how best we can what? We can cover them. That's what we are doing. That's what we are doing. We are not throwing any, attack or any bullet to anybody. We are just analyzing, the scientific jurisprudence and, psychological and philosophical issues that our communities are facing. Then we'll be able to counter some of these, questions that people ask, which are nonsense questions. But because we will not be able to bridge the gap between all these sciences and then Islamic, education, we can't answer. We're not able to cross the T's and dot the I's. There is a brother on Facebook, I think Abi Wakas, doing very well. There's this debate going on Facebook, especially the rise of issues concerning, the common sense family and then, the critical thinking family and stuff like that. So there was these questions that were going on. And recently, you remember, we had to cancel a debate between Sheikh Mohammed Awal and that gentleman, I've forgotten his name. What was his name? That common sense family guy. We had to cancel the debate because we saw that it was needless. Because Sheikh Awal is on a different level and that guy is also somewhere. He is not fit to debate even small children within the Muslim community because he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't understand English language. He doesn't understand Islam and Arabic. So we need to put that aside. So Abu Waqqas, and there was this Abu Waqqas spoke about, the prominence and then the greatness of Islam, especially the Quran. And there was this guy who, commented under that there are a lot of scientific, errors in the Quran. So he was challenged to bring one scientific error in the Quran. So his proof was that in Quran chapter 51 verse 49, that is Surah Al-Dhariyat verse 49, where the Almighty Allah says, وَإِن مِّن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ اثْنَيْنِ. The verse doesn't come. You check 51 verse 49. And that his proof was that the Almighty Allah said that He created every animal in pairs. He created every animal in pairs. And that it is scientifically wrong. His reason is that there is an animal in South America called the whip-tailed lizard, and they are all females. So if the Quran is saying all animals were created in pairs, and then there is an animal in South America which is only female, they don't have males, then the Quran is scientifically wrong. So that caught my attention, and I went to the verse and I saw that no, it is a wrong translation of the verse. So another point, we need to merge the education together. If you're going to rely solely on English translations of the Quran, you get a lot of Arabic, you get a lot of things wrong. Because these Muslim scholars who did a great job in translating the Quran for us in other languages, you find out that not all the translations are all not the same in terms of choice of word, in terms of, you find Dr. Mustafa Khattab has his translation. There is translation of Sahih International. There is Muhsin Khan and Taqiyuddin Al-Hilali translation. There is Muhammad Marmaduke William Pickthall, his translation. There is Yusuf Ali translation. There is Abdul Halim translation. There is Mufti Taqi Usmani translation. So all these translations differ. But then, to return back to the point, I realized that no, what the guy was saying was it is a wrong translation that he gave. Because وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. The Almighty Allah is saying from everything we created them in pairs. Everything. The Quran didn't mention, animals specifically. He said in everything we created them in pairs. So the guy translated the verse wrongly to suit his agenda, and we had a back and forth with him. I had a back and forth with him on Facebook, telling him, no, it is a wrong translation. And then he contested, no, I should bring the right translation. He didn't even know where the verse is in the Quran. He maybe cherry-picked it somewhere on the internet just to try to prove a point. I told him, no, he should give us his solution to that verse. He should give us his source of translation. In the end, when he checked, he realized that no, his translation is wrong. The Quran didn't say in Surah Al-Dhariyat that he created animals in male and female. He said he created everything from pairs. So the issue of male and female is mostly found in biology. You go to chemistry, there's nothing like male and female in chemistry. You come to physics, there's nothing like male and female. So I went further to study that whip-tailed lizard, and I realized that that animal itself is a result of a pair, which is they have a form of hybridization that a male of another species will mate with the female of another species in a process they call parthenogenesis. Hey, the word, I've always found it difficult, pronouncing the word. So the male of another species will mate with the female of another species in that process, and then they will bring forth that animal who is only female. And that animal, if it wants to reproduce, it crosses its chromosomes, pair again. So what I'm trying to say is, in studying the Quran, there's a need for us to also study these, sciences, the human sciences, the natural sciences. It's mind-boggling. If you study these natural sciences and human sciences, and then you come and study the Quran, you will be amazed as to the kind of compatibility. In 2018, the African Union invited me for a conference in Chad, in Jamina. And the conference was in collaboration with King Abdullah Ibn Abdulaziz International Center for Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue. And I was supposed to present a paper. The paper was the role of religious leaders in safeguarding the environment. The role of religious leaders in safeguarding the ecology. And I did my research, and it was amazing. I read verses in the Quran that was talking about the environment, the ecology, and I was amazed. Reading them before the paper gave me a different perspective. But after I did my research work, I realized that no, look at the verses of Surah An-Nahl from the beginning. You realize the Quran speaking about bees, speaking about animals, speaking about trees, speaking about plants, speaking about issues concerning, pollination, cross-pollination, and then the result that the same tree will bear, fruits on the same stalk. The fruits will have different tastes and stuff like that. So the different, or the second, community of scholars we have within the Muslim community are scholars who, studied Islam, fiqh, tawheed, hadith, seerah. They studied them. But then there is this deficiency when it comes to, the natural sciences and the human sciences. So the first community of scholars we said were people who went to the English schools. They studied the natural sciences, they studied the human sciences, they didn't have the Islamic sciences. The second group on the other end of the spectrum studied Islamic sciences, but then they didn't study into details, what we call, the human sciences and then the natural sciences. And it's a fact in our communities. Then there are people who are in between. They have gone to school, the English school, and they have gone to the Arabic school. So they're able to blend between the two. You find some of them experts in both fields. They are medical doctors, great Islamic scholars. They are great Islamic scholars. They are police officers. And we have a lot of them. You might not know. Take the national imam of the Ghana Police Service, Superintendent of Police, Sheikh Hussein Abdul Rahim Hussein. my mentor. Studied in Medina, and now he has a master degree in communication from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. I went to his graduation last year. He's a police officer. He is also a sheikh. He has master's degree in communication. My lifetime mentor, Sheikh Amin, studied Islam, da'iyah, an engineer, combines the two. If you see him going for his da'wah, and then people say, this guy, he knows A, you doubt. He has his thick beard, he is in his jalbab, he is in his turban. Great. So we have those people. Take Imam Abbas Abdul Karim. He studied in Egypt. Wonderful scholar, Islamic scholar. At the same time, he has, I've lost count the number of master's degrees he has. Communication, leadership, and stuff like that. The brother to Sheikh Hussein, his brother, Dr. Hassan, a lecturer at Legon, an Islamic scholar. The current Imam of Medina Zongo, Medina Central Mosque, Sheikh Salman, combine the two. So we have them. There is Professor Marzouk at the office of the National Chief Imam. So it's not, if you see some of us sitting here speaking, those of us who are in our 30s, that maybe we are fortunate enough, we've gone to Islamic education, we've gone to secular education. It didn't start with us. We have Sheikh Yaqub Aban, the General Secretary of Al-Sunnah al-Jama'ah Ghana, astute Islamic scholar, wonderful orator. Combine that. Dr. Salah of Egypt, you remember Dr. Salah? He came to Ghana with Mufti Menk. Dr. Salah has a PhD in comparative fiqh. At the same time, he has a BA in pharmacology. BA in pharmacology. At the same time, PhD in comparative fiqh. So, to solve the problems that we are facing now as Muslims in Ghana, across the world, looking at the onslaught of materialism, looking at the onslaught of atheism, looking at the onslaught of deism, looking at the onslaught of, of weakness, of backwardness, looking at the situation that you find Muslims in, then there's a need for us to find, a blend between the two, but according to Islamic sciences. So in the series, we'll come and talk about Muslim scholars who are at the same time, philosophers, Sharia scholars at the same time, psychologists, philosophers, medical doctors and the stuff. You go to, Andalusia, Muslim Spain, you find them, they are in abundance. You come to Baghdad, you find the Arrazis, the Abtusis, you find them, they are there. We'll speak about them. So that the young Muslim who is studying psychology, philosophy in the universities will not be in a dilemma at all. We don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. I can never have all the answers. But then I just want to scratch somewhere for you, to just touch light somewhere for you, so that you can go on further to do research within what Muslim scholars have written. What we are trying to do is just to unravel the mystery for you to understand that Islam is not a backward religion. Islam is compatible with philosophy. Islam is compatible with psychology. Islam is compatible with science. Islam has its own, scientific proofs. Islam has its own, epistemology. Islam is in tandem with these things. Just that Islam's position on psychology and philosophy would definitely differ from what other civilizations have on the same subject. So we just want to shed light on Islam's position on these things, so that if you're studying in UCC, you're studying in Legon, you're studying in UST, in UDS, in University of Education, Winneba, as a young Muslim, you when you are faced with these challenges, at least you will have a fair share of where to touch, which buttons to press to be able to arrive at something that will safeguard your iman. The Prophet Muhammad made mention that there will be a time, be very careful, a Muslim will wake up a Muslim, but by the time it is evening, he is not a Muslim. Someone will go to bed as a Muslim, will wake up as a non-Muslim. We are living in those times whereby we have ideological warfare. We have ideological warfare. This is what is going on now. The ideological warfares are as dangerous as the nuclear warfare that we are seeing. Because people have understood that you can't defeat Islam with using only weapons. When I mean weapons, biological or nuclear weapons. The most dangerous of weapons is the ideological weapon. And it is ongoing. It started more than 1,000 years ago against Islam. The kuffar of Mecca had ideological, questions and answers to ask the Prophet Muhammad to derail the young Muslim community. It didn't stop. Nations upon nations came after, and they're still doing it. People are paying huge monies because there's a need for us to distort the mind of the Muslim, to attack Islam, to make Islam seem barbaric, to make Islam look, attacking the female, to bring to the fore that Islam is against, female empowerment. Islam is a patriarchal religion. It's a misogynist religion. Islam is a religion that doesn't care about the welfare of the woman. So, and definitely, if you want to destroy any community, attack its women and attack its education, and you are done with that community. But if you want a community to survive, then make sure you protect its women and then protect its form of education. So today, we just, put out these questions to you to scratch your minds so that we can engage in this discussion and see how best we can put these things into perspective. So what we're going to look at is Islam and knowledge in general. Islam and knowledge. We'll start from that. We'll look at that for a couple of weeks because it's going to be a series which inshallah we're going to continue every Thursday around this time. Maybe 11:30 a.m. Eastern USA time or 3:30 p.m. GMT or latest 4 p.m. GMT Ghana time. We are going to look at that every Thursday inshallah. Every Thursday. So make a date with us every Thursday on this channel, 4 p.m. GMT or 12 p.m. Eastern US time, and then we are going to discuss these issues. We're going to do it from a scientific point of view with evidence, so that the Muslim who is in a dilemma, how am I going to face these things, will have answers to those questions. And the Muslim sheikh who has not read about psychology and philosophy will also have the opportunity, because we'll be giving references, books that you may read too. Yes, we have references in Arabic about philosophy and psychology. Yes, we have them. Tons of books on that. And as at now, I'm even downloading some of them and trying to read, listen, And as I said, I don't have all the answers, and I will never have all the answers. I'm not an expert in the field, but then I'm just trying to do my widow's mite for our younger brothers and sisters and cousins and brothers who have been asking these questions, especially in the age of internet, where any kind of information can have access to your phone, and you can't filter what you receive, and sometimes you can't answer the questions genuinely. We'll take some questions from you, inshallah, and then we call it a day, but make a date. The Islamic philosophy class. Islamic philosophy class is on Thursdays
at 4 p.m. Inshallah. We'll look at these things little by little till when the Almighty Allah wills. Inshallah. So if you have any questions, you can ask them. We'll stay for the next 5-10 minutes to answer your questions or your suggestions. So if you have any suggestions or if you think of any topics that you want us to treat, I have my pen and paper here. I'll be taking notes, and then we can see how best we can help each other. So if you have any books you want me to read, any references you want me to follow, any video you want me to watch, no problem. I'm ready to do that. Musa Meti says Salaam alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much for passing by. Kunate Goze said, great, you too great. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. Abu Muhammad says, MashaAllah, muhadaratun ra'i'atun jiddan. Yes, Abu Muhammad, we need to be asking some of these questions and we need to tackle them. Definitely. It's getting scary by the day. If you see a Muslim lady on Facebook says Allah is a she because she's a feminist, so Allah is a she. It's scary. We don't know what next they're going to call Allah. So we need to find solutions to these problems. Ibrahim Real Chugudu says Salam alaikum, alaikum salam. Fatima EB says MashaAllah, MashaAllah too. So we need to have these discussions. Yes, we can't run away from them. And we don't need to run away from them. The more we run away from them, the more murkier the water gets. The murkier the water gets. We can't run away from them. We don't need to run away from them. Those questions that those people are asking are questions that we can answer them. When I say we, not me specifically, but then there are solutions to them within the Islamic Sharia, within our Islamic literature. Muslim scholars have written extensively about, psychology and philosophy. We have the Ghazalis, we have Ibn Taymiyyah, we have Ibn al-Qayyim. They've written about these things. So Ibn Taymiyyah was not only a scholar in Sharia, he was a scholar, he was a philosopher. And read what Western philosophers have written about Ibn Taymiyyah. Read about Al-Ghazali, read about them, and the books that they've written, Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, yes, Tahafut al-Falasifa, and stuff like that. We wrote books, we have them. But then, if you don't have a foundation in philosophy, then it becomes a problem for you to be able to cope up with these writings. So I heard our brothers who are reading philosophy and psychology in school read about Ghazali, read about Ibn Taymiyyah and then his philosophical views, read about his student Ibn al-Qayyim and his philosophical views. Current, contemporary scholars like Muhammad Imara, may the Almighty Allah forgive him and grant him Jannah. He died some few months ago. Read about his books. There are books by Mustafa Mahmoud. Read about them. Some of these, Egyptian, brains are wonderful when it comes to, psychology and philosophy. Yes, some of these scholars that I mentioned, some of us will have problem with their aqidah. Yes, some of them have issues with their aqidah. But then when it comes to philosophy, they did a great deal of work for us, especially the Mu'tazila school of thought. The Mu'tazila is a sect, a school of thought in Islam that deals with rationality. They, for them, everything mind. And then they did a great work in terms of, writing books in defeating and refuting some of these things. So like Qadi Abdul Jabbar had this book, Al-Mughni fi Abwab al-Tawheed wal-Adl. Great mind. He's a Mu'tazila. He had problems with his aqidah and some stuff. But then when it comes to some of these fields, those people are mind-boggling. So does it mean we take from them wholesale? No. It doesn't mean we boycott them wholesale. No. As students of knowledge, we need to be circumspect in where we take our information from. We need to authenticate the information, but then it doesn't mean that if someone has a problem in Aqidah, we throw all his works into rubbish. No. We don't do that. Where he's right, we say he's right. Where he's wrong, we say he's wrong. And that's it. End of story. Where he's wrong, we warn against that.
No, don't take from so and so and so and so in this regard because he has this problem in this regard. He is wrong here, he is wrong here, he is wrong here. But then when you come to this field, yes, this is it. Alhamdulillah. That's what, knowledge is all about. Scholarship, that's what it's all about. Because sometimes you find out that you look into your sect and then there is small or minimal information concerning a subject. But then you look into another sect and then you find out that, whoa, these people have it. So you go in there and then you read, but then you are circumspect, trying to pick. So this is advice to students of knowledge, because sometimes you find, on social media, don't listen to this sheikh because this sheikh has said that he's like this. Don't listen to this sheikh because this sheikh has said so about him. Don't listen to this sheikh because this sheikh has said so about him. Please, student of knowledge, be careful. Be careful about some of those things. Leave those things to scholars. Ibn Abi Dhi'ib was in Medina with Imam Malik. And then when he was asked about Imam Malik, he said Imam Malik majhul. He said Imam Malik is unknown. They were all in Medina together. Go and read about the competition between Imam al-Sakhawi and Imam al-Suyuti. They lived in the same era. Suyuti died 911. Sakhawi died 902. There was just 9-year difference between them in death. Go and read about Ibn Hajar and Al-Aini. So there are issues between scholars. So don't engage in that. You study, read, wide, pick notes, be objective in the kind of knowledge you pick, in the kind of scholars you listen to. Be objective. When they are right, they are right. When they are wrong, they are wrong. You are free. But then, if because the sheikh that you love or you follow has a problem with another sheikh and then he calls him names without being objective, and know very well that some of our scholars are humans. They will make mistakes. They will make wrong pronouncements. So be very careful. Don't listen to Qardawi. Don't listen to Mufti Menk. Don't listen to Bilal Phillips. Don't listen to Asim Al-Hakim. Don't listen to. Personally, I don't buy that. Personally. Because I read hadith. And I know what it goes into riwayah and dirayah. And I've read what Imam Shafi has written about the riwayah. And if you read Alfiyatul Iraqi, Dhikru man tuqbal riwayatu wa man turad, they've espoused there. So if you come to me and tell me, don't listen to that sheikh because this sheikh, who is a contemporary of his, had said so about him, I throw it into the dustbin. You want me to even read more about that sheikh? The message is, let's be objective in following sheikhs, in listening to them. When they are right, they are right. When they are wrong, let's not be afraid, or let's not shy away, or let's not defend them wrongly. Yeah, he's my sheikh. He's wrong, he's wrong. You deal with him with respect. The fact that he's wrong doesn't mean that his position or his scholarship or his personality in the field of jurisprudence is questionable. No. Every scholar has his mistake. Whether it is in Aqidah, whether it is in fiqh, whether it is in mantiq, whether it's in hadith. Imam Hafs, this recital that we have, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Malik, Imam Hafs that this, the predominant, Quran recital in the world now, Imam Hafs. Imamun fil qira'at, da'ifun fil hadith. Go and read his history in Taqrib al-Tahdhib by Ibn Hajar. Imamun fil qira'at. He is imam in the field of qira'at. But in the field of hadith, he is weak. In the field of hadith, we don't accept his hadith. But for the fact that he's weak in the field of hadith, doesn't mean that in the field of qira'at, we should also throw his qira'at into the dustbin. No, we don't do that. Someone will say, okay, fine. But then, what if the issue is about Aqidah? Aqidah is prominent. Yes, Aqidah is prominent. And there are a lot of scholars that had problems in Aqidah. Some scholars were accused. Some rightly, some wrongly. Some of them in their ijtihad, in their striving, to put things into perspective, they commit errors. So will you hold it against them? No, you can't do that. So this is just by the way. Students of knowledge, let's be objective. Especially students of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, let's be objective. You find Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi, who has been accused of Tashayyur, Shia. You read Taqrib al-Tahdhib of Ibn Hajar, you find it in there. Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi is accused of Shiism. You read Imam al-Nawawi accused of Ash'ari. Even Ibn Hajar accused of Ash'ari. Even Ibn Taymiyyah accused of Ta'wil. So if Ibn Taymiyyah has been accused of something, and even if that thing has happened to him, he really did that thing, so we throw all the works of Ibn Taymiyyah into the dustbin? If because Ibn Hajar has been accused of Ash'ari views, and then we find out sometimes he does Ta'wil, should we throw all his books into the dustbin? Or because if Al-Hakim al-Naysaburi has been accused of Shiism, we throw all his books into the dustbin? No. The fact that someone has been accused of something is not evidence. An accusation is not evidence. An allegation is not concrete. We need to prove it. And then even if we are able to prove it, we need to, sieve the concrete from the chaff. And that makes us students of knowledge. The copying and pasting is too much, students. We will copy and paste, no two ways about that. Whether we like it or not, we will copy and paste. But then when we are copying and pasting, let's do it intellectually. Let's probe. Let's ask questions. I remember when I was doing my master's in Sharia, in Hadith and Tafsir. We will be given research work. We were 16 in class. In Hadith, I quite remember, I was given a topic, Ta'arud al-Raf wal-Waqf. Those of you who understand Hadith will understand this topic. Ta'arud al-Raf wal-Waqf. And I was given a Hadith to go and find. I went and then I searched the Hadith, found the Hadith, found its roots, found everything about it, and then I read the definition of al-Raf and then al-Waqf, marfu wa mawquf, and then I brought it to class, and then we were discussing it with the professor, and the professor asked me, okay, this is what Ibn Hajar has said, this is what Khatib al-Baghdadi has said, what do you say? What do I say? Not meaning me, I'm not a scholar, no. What do you think about Ibn Salah's definition compared to Iraqi's definition, or compared to Khatib al-Baghdadi's position, or compared to all these definitions that you've brought? Is there any correlation? Is there any? You need to probe. You need to ask questions. And that's what makes you a student of knowledge. But then, al-lasq wa-nasq, al-nasq wa-lasq, al-nasq wa-lasq, it doesn't help. It doesn't help at all. So thank you very much. Inshallah, Thursday, meet us on Thursday, 4 p.m. And then we'll discuss these issues, inshallah. Thank you very much for passing by. May Almighty Allah safeguard us. Jazakumullahu khairan, barakallahu fikum, assalamu alaikum. Subhanaka Allahumma hamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun alal mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin, wa assalamu alaikum.